Hey, hey, what's happening, everyone? Welcome back to Storytime with Dottie. Looks like some of my favorites are here. Sue Finelli, Kirk Wilson, Michelle L. Hello, hello. So I apologize that I didn't do story time last week. I was on vacation and I completely forgot to bring my book with me. So I just skipped last week, but I'm sorry if you were looking forward to it and I was not here. But yeah, vacation was really nice. My son and I went on a road trip and we drove down to the Bay Area and saw Sue Finelli. And then we drove down to LA and we saw Barbara Zena and her son, Steven, who goes by Real Cosmology on YouTube. And also we saw Crumb, so that was super awesome. And then we headed back north and we were heading to Glass Beach in Fort Bragg, and we ended up stopping and spending the night in, I don't know, some random place. It is so hot in here. This light that I have just kills me every time. Yeah, so we stayed the night in some random place, and it was nice because we were still 3 hours from Glass Beach. And so, yeah, then we got up in the morning, we headed up to Glass Beach, and that was super cool. Lots of sea glass on the beach, so that was great. And then we headed north again, kind of northeast, and headed to Daryl Davis's farm, and we stayed with him, and Nathan Thompson was there and a few other people. So we stayed with him for a couple days and just had a really good time. And yeah, then we came back north, went through Oregon, stopped at the Tillamook Cheese Factory, and then stopped at Cannon Beach for sunset, and built a sandcastle, and I let my son destroy it, and it was a lot of fun. It was really great. I am going to be right back. Just one quick moment. Be right back. Okay, now please tell me if my fan is too loud. I moved it off the table that it was like rattling on. So now it's on the floor. But let me know if it's too loud because I can turn it off and just like suffer through the heat for you guys. But yeah, let me know if the fan's too loud. But yeah, hope everyone's doing well. We're continuing with The Horse and His Boy in the Chronicles of Narnia series. And we are on chapters 9 and 10. So we're really just flying through this book. You can't hear the fan? That's what I'm going for. Awesome. That's what I want. Because it's hot AF up in here. So, yeah, so chapter 9, Across the Desert. Awesome, you rock, Kirk. How dreadful, how perfectly dreadful, whimpered Lazareline. Oh, darling, I am so frightened. I'm shaking all over. Feel me. Come on, said Erebus, who was trembling herself. They've gone back to the new palace. Once we're out of this room, we're safe enough. But it's wasted a terrible time. Get me down to that water gate as quick as you can. Darling, how can you? Squeaked Lazareline. I can't do anything. Not now. My poor nerves. No, we must just lie still a bit and then go back. Why back? Asked Erebus. Oh, you don't understand. You're so unsympathetic, said Lazareline, beginning to cry. Erebus decided it was no occasion for mercy. Look here, she said, catching Lazareline and giving her a good shake. If you say another word about going back, and if you don't start taking me to that water gate at once, do you know what I'll do? I'll rush out into that passage and scream. Then we'll both be caught. Well, we shall be killed, said Lazareline. Didn't you hear what the Tisroc, may he live forever, said? Yes, and I'd sooner be killed than married to a Hashta, so come on. Oh, you are unkind, said Lazareline, and I in such a state. But in the end, she had to give in to Erebus. She led the way down the steps they had already descended and along another corridor, and so finally out into the open air. They were now in the palace garden, which sloped down in terraces to the city wall. The moon shone brightly. One of the drawbacks about adventures is that when you come to the most beautiful places, you are often too anxious and hurried to appreciate them. So the Erebus, though she remembered them years later, only had a vague impression of gray lawns, quietly bubbling fountains, and the long black shadows of cypress trees. To the one, hey, how's your vacation going? Singeman, what's up? I'll just join in at chapter 10 with no idea of the story. That is like me. I mean, hey, at least you're here. So, and you can always go back and listen to the first 2 books and the rest of this story. So they're all in playlists just for you, just for your enjoyment. When they reached the very bottom and the wall rose frowning above them, Lazareline was shaking so that she could not unbolt the gate. Erebus did it. There at last was the river, full of reflected moonlight and a little landing stage and a few pleasure boats. Goodbye, said Erebus, and thank you. I'm sorry if I've been a pig, but think what I'm flying from. Oh, Erebus, darling, said Lazareline, won't you change your mind now that you've seen what a very great man Ahashta is? Great man, said Erebus, a hideous groveling slave who flatters when he's kicked, but treasures it all up and hopes to get his own back by egging on that horrible Tisroc to plot his son's death? Ha! I'd sooner marry my father's scullion than a creature like that. Oh, Erebus, Erebus, how can you say such dreadful things about the And about the Tisroc, may he live forever, too. It must be right if he's going to do it. Goodbye, said Erebus. And I thought your dress was lovely, and I think your house is lovely too, and I'm sure you'll have a lovely life. Though it wouldn't suit me. Close the door softly behind me. She tore herself away from her friend's affectionate embraces, stepped into a punt, cast off, and a moment later was out in midstream with a huge real moon overhead and a huge reflected moon down, deep down in the river. The air was fresh and cool, and as she drew nearer the farther bank, she heard the hooting of an owl. Ah, that's better, thought Erebus. She had always lived in the country and had hated every minute of her time in Tashbaan. When she stepped ashore, she found herself in darkness, for the rise of the ground and the trees cut off the moonlight. But she managed to find the same road that Shasta had found, and came just as he had done to the end of the grass and the beginning of the sand, and looked, like him, to her left, and saw the big black tombs. And now at last, brave girl though she was, her heart quailed. Supposing the others weren't there? Supposing the ghouls were, but she stuck out her chin and a little bit of her tongue too, and went straight toward them. But before she had reached them, she saw Bree and Win and the groom. You can go back to your mistress now, said Erebus, quite forgetting that he couldn't, until the city gates open next morning. Here is money for your pains. To hear is to obey, said the groom, and at once set off at a remarkable speed in the direction of the city. There was no need to tell him to make haste. He also had been thinking a good deal about ghouls. For the next few seconds, Erebus was busy kissing the noses and patting the necks of Win and Bree, just as if they were quite ordinary horses. And here comes Shasta. Thanks be to the lion, said Bree. Erebus looked round, and there, right enough, was Shasta, who had come out of hiding the moment he saw the groom going away. And now, said Erebus, there's not a moment to lose. And in hasty words she told them about Rabadash's expedition. Treacherous hounds, said Bree, shaking his mane and stamping his hoof. An attack in time of peace without defiance sent. But we'll grease his oats for him. We'll be there before he is. Can we? Said Erebus, swinging herself into Win's saddle. Shasta wished he could mount like that. Woo-hoo, snorted Bree. Up you get, Shasta. Can we? And with a good start, too. He said he was going to start at once, said Erebus. That's how humans talk, said Bree. But you don't get a company of 200 horsemen watered and victualled and armed and saddled and started all in a minute. Now, what's our direction? Due north? No, said Shasta. I know about that. I've drawn a line. I'll explain later. Bear a bit to our left, both you horses. Ah, here it is. Now, said Bree, all that about galloping for a day and a night, like in stories, can't really be done. It must be walk and trot, but brisk trots and short walks. And whenever we walk, you two humans can slip off and walk too. Now, are you ready? When off we go, Narnia and the North. At first, it was delightful. The night had now been going on for so many hours that the sand had almost finished giving back all the sun heat it had received during the day, and the air was cool, fresh, and clear. Under the moonlight, the sand in every direction and as far as they could see gleamed as if it were smooth water or a great silver tray. Except for the noise of Breeze and Wind's hooves, there was not a sound to be heard. Shasta would nearly have fallen asleep if he had not had to dismount and walk every now and then. This seemed to last for hours. Then there came a time when there was no longer any moon. They seemed to ride in the dead darkness for hours and hours. And after that there came a moment when Shasta noticed that he could see Bree's neck and head in front of him a little more clearly than before. And slowly, very slowly, he began to notice the vast gray flatness to every side. It looked absolutely dead, like something in a dead world, and Shasta felt quite terribly tired and noticed that he was getting cold and that his lips were dry. And all the time the squeak of the leather, the jingle of the bits, and the noise of the hooves, not pruppity pruppity as it would be on a hard road, but thubbity thubbity on a dry sand. At last, after hours of riding, far away on his right there came a single long streak of paler gray, low down on the horizon, then a streak of red. It was the morning at last, but without a single bird to sing about it. He was glad of the walking bits now, for he was colder than ever. Then suddenly the sun rose and everything changed in a moment. The gray sand turned yellow and twinkled as if it was strewn with diamonds. On their left, the shadows of Shasta and Wynn and Bree and Erebus, enormously large, raced beside them. The double peak of Mount Pyre far ahead flashed in the sunlight, and Shasta saw that they were a little out of the course. A bit left, he sang out. Best of all, when you looked back, Tashbaan was already small and remote. The tombs were quite invisible, swallowed up in that single jagged-edged hump which was the city of the Tisroc. Everyone felt better. But not for long. Though Tashbaan looked very far away when they first saw it, it refused to look any farther away as they went on. Shasta gave up looking back at it, for it only gave him the feeling that they were not moving at all. Then the light became a nuisance. The glare of the sand made his eyes ache, but he knew he mustn't shut them. He must screw them up and keep looking on ahead at Mount Pyre and shouting out directions. Then came the heat. He noticed it for the first time when he had to dismount and walk. As he slipped down to the sand, the heat from it struck up into his face as if from the opening of an oven door. Next time it was worse. But the third time, as his bare feet touched the sand, he screamed with pain and got one foot back in the stirrup and the other half over Bree's back before you could have said knife. Sorry, Bree, he gasped. I can't walk. It burns my feet. Of course, panted Bree. Should have thought of that myself. Stay on. Can't be helped. It's all right for you, said Shasta to Erebus, who was walking beside Wynn. You've got shoes on. Erebus said nothing and looked prim. Let's hope she didn't mean to, but she did. On again, trot and walk and trot, jingle, 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 squeak, 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 smell of hot horse, smell of hot self, blinding glare, headache, and nothing at all different for mile after mile. Tashbaan would never look any further away. The mountains would never look any nearer. You felt this has been going on for always. Jingle, 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 squeak, 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 smell of hot horse, smell of hot self. Of course, one tried all sorts of games with oneself to try to make the time pass, and of course they were all no good. And one one tried very hard not to think of drinks. Iced sherbet in a palace at Tashbaan, clear spring water tinkling with a dark earthy sound, cold smooth milk just creamy enough and not too creamy. And the harder you tried not to think, the more you thought. At last, there was something different. A mass of rock sticking up out of the sand about 50 yards long and 30 feet high. It did not cast much shadow, for the sun was now very high, but it cast a little. Into that shade they crowded. There they ate some food and drank a little water. It is not easy giving a horse a drink out of a skin bottle, but Bree and Wynn were clever with their lips. No one had anything like enough. No one spoke. The horses were flecked with foam, and their breathing was noisy. The children were pale. At last, there was something different. A mass of rock sticking. Oh, no. After a very short rest, they went on again. Same noises, same smells, same glare, till at last their shadows began to fall on their right, and then got longer and longer till they seemed to stretch out to the eastern end of the world. Very slowly the sun drew nearer to the western horizon, and now at last he was down, and thank goodness the merciless glare was gone, though the heat coming up from the sand was still as bad as ever. 4 pairs of eyes were looking out eagerly for any sign of the valley that Salopad the raven had spoken about, but mile after mile there was nothing but level sand. And now the day was quite definitely done, and most of the stars were out, and still the horses thundered on, and the children rose and sank in their saddles, miserable with thirst and weariness. Not till the moon had risen did Shasta, in the strange barking voice of someone whose mouth is perfectly dry, shout out, "There it is!" There was no mistaking it now. Ahead and a little to their right, there was at last a slope downward, and hummocks of rock on each side. The horses were far too tired to speak, but they swung round toward it, and in a minute or two they were entering the gully. At first it was worse in there than it had been out in the open desert, for there was a breathless stuffiness between the rocky walls, and less moonlight. The slope continued steeply downward, and the rocks on either hand rose to the height of cliffs. Then they began to meet vegetation, prickly cactus-like plants and coarse grass of the kind that would prick your fingers. Soon the horse hooves were falling on pebbles and stones instead of sand. Round every bend of the valley, and it had many bends, they looked eagerly for water. The horses were nearly at the end of their strength now, and Wynne, stumbling and panting, was lagging behind Bree. They were almost in despair before at last they came to a little muddiness and a tiny trickle of water through softer and better grass. And the trickle became a brook, and the brook became a stream with bushes on each side, and the stream became a river, and there came, after more disappointments than I could possibly describe, a moment when Shasta, who had been in a kind of doze, suddenly realized that Bree had stopped and found himself slipping off. Before them a little cataract of water poured into a broad pool, and both the horses were already in the pool with their heads down, drinking, drinking, drinking. "Ooh," said Shasta, and plunged in. It was about up to his knees, and stooped his head right into the cataract. It was perhaps the loveliest moment in his life. It was about 10 minutes later when all 4 of them, the 2 children, wet nearly all over, came out and began to notice their surroundings. The moon was now high enough to peep down into the valley. There was soft grass on both sides of the river, and beyond the grass, trees and bushes sloped up to the bases of the cliffs. There must have been some wonderful flowering shrubs hidden in the shadowy undergrowth, for the whole glade was full of the coolest and most delicious smells, and out of the darkest recess among the trees there came a sound Shasta had never heard before, a nightingale. Everyone was much too tired to speak or eat. The horses, without waiting to be unsaddled, lay down at once. So did Erebus and Shasta. About 10 minutes later, the careful Wind said, "But we mustn't go to sleep. We've got to keep ahead of that Rabbadash." "No," said Bree very slowly, "mustn't go to sleep. Just a little rest." Shasta knew for a moment that they would all go to sleep if he didn't get up and do something about it, and felt that he ought to. In fact, he decided that he would get up and persuade them to go on, but presently, "Not yet, not just yet." Very soon the moon shone, and the nightingale sang over 2 horses and 2 human children, all fast asleep. It was Erebus who awoke first. The sun was already high in the heavens, and the cool morning hours were already wasted. "It's my fault," she said to herself furiously as she jumped up and began rousing the others. "One wouldn't expect horses to keep awake after a day's work like that, even if they can talk, and of course that boy wouldn't. He's had no decent training, but I ought to have known better." The others were dazed and stupid with the heaviness of their sleep. "Hey ho, boo hoo," said Bree. Been sleeping in my saddle. I'll never do that again. Most uncomfortable. Oh, come on, said Erebus. We've lost half the morning already. There isn't a moment to spare. A fellow's got to have a mouthful of grass, said Bree. I'm afraid we can't wait, said Erebus. What's the terrible hurry, said Bree. We've crossed the desert, haven't we? But we're not in Archenland yet, said Erebus, and we've got to get there before Rabadash. Oh, we must be miles ahead of him, said Bree. Haven't we been coming a shorter way? Didn't that raven friend of yours say this is a shortcut, Shasta? He didn't say anything about shorter, answered Shasta. He only said better, because you got to a river this way. If the oasis is due north of Tashban, then I'm afraid this may be longer. Well, I can't go on without a snack, said Bree. Take my bridle off, Shasta. Please, said Wynne very shyly. I feel just like Bree that I can't go on, but when horses have humans with spurs and things on their back, aren't they often made to go on when they're feeling like this, and they then find they can? I mean, oughtn't we to be able to do more even now that we're free? It's all for Narnia. I think, ma'am, said Bree very crushingly, that I know a little more about campaigns and forced marches and what a horse can stand than you do. Always get more jelly beans, Singeman. Just that's a given. Always more snacks. More cowbell and more snacks. To this, Wynne made no answer, being like most highly bred mares, a very nervous and gentle person who was easily put down. In reality, she was quite right, and if Bree had had a tarkin on his back at that moment to make him go on, he would have found that he was good for several hours hard going. But one of the worst results of being a slave and being forced to do things is that when there is no one to force you anymore, you find you have almost lost the power of forcing yourself. So they had to wait while Bree had a snack and a drink, and of course Wynne and the children had a snack and a drink too. It must have been nearly 11 o'clock in the morning before they finally got going again, and even then Bree took things much more gently than yesterday. It was really Wynne, though she was the weaker and more tired of the two, who set the pace. Hey, Eric, you made it! Exactly, never enough cowbell, Zulu. The valley itself, with its brown, cool river and grass and moss and wildflowers and rhododendrons, was such a pleasant pace that it made you want to ride slowly. Chapter 10, The Hermit of the Southern March. All right. After they had ridden for several hours down the valley, it widened out and they could see what was ahead of them. The river which they had been following joined a broader river, wide and turbulent, which flowed from their left to their right, toward the east. Beyond this new river, a delightful country rose gently in low hills, ridge beyond ridge, to the northern mountains themselves. To the right, there were rocky pinnacles, one or two of them with snow clinging to the ledges. To the left, pine-clad slopes, frowning cliffs, narrow gorges, and blue peaks stretched away as far as the eye could see. He could no longer make out Mount Pyre. Straight ahead, the mountain range sank into a wooded saddle, which of course must be the pass from Archenland into Narnia. Boo-hoo-hoo! The north, the green north, neighed Bree, and certainly the lower hills looked greener and fresher than anything that Erebus and Shasta, with their southern-bred eyes, had ever imagined. Spirits rose as they clattered down to the water's meet of the two rivers. The eastern flowing river, which was pouring from the higher mountains at the western end of the range, was far too swift and too broken with rapids for them to think of swimming it. But after some casting about up and down the bank, they found a place shallow enough to wade. The roar and clatter of water, the great swirl against the horses' fetlocks, the cool stirring air, and the darting dragonflies filled Shasta with a strange excitement. "Friends, we are in Archenland," said Bree proudly as he splashed and turned his way out on the northern bank. "I think that river we've just crossed is called the Winding Arrow." "I hope we're in time," murmured Win. Then they began going up, slowly zigzagging a good deal, for the hills were steep. It was all open, park-like country with no roads or houses in sight. Scattered trees, never thick enough to be a forest, were everywhere. Shasta, who had lived all his life in an almost treeless grassland, had never seen so many or so many kinds. If you had been there, you probably would have known, he didn't, that he was seeing oaks, beeches, silver birches, rowans, and sweet chestnuts. Rabbits scurried away in every direction as they advanced, and presently they saw a whole herd of fallow deer making off among the trees. "Isn't it simply glorious?" said Aravis. At the first ridge, Shasta turned in the saddle and looked back. There was no sign of Tashbaan. The desert, unbroken except by the narrow green crack which they had traveled down, spread to the horizon. "Hello," he said suddenly. "What's that?" "What's what?" said Bree, turning round. Win and Aravis did the same. "That," said Shasta, pointing. "It looks like smoke. Is it a fire?" "Sandstorm, I should say," said Bree. "Not much wind to raise it," said Aravis. "Oh," exclaimed Win, "look, there are things flashing in it. Look, they're helmets and armor, and it's moving this way." "By Tash," said Aravis, "it's the army. It's Rabadash." "Of course it is," said Win. "Just what I was afraid of. Quick, we must get to Anverd before it." And without another word, she whisked round and began galloping north. Bree tossed his head and did the same. "Come on, Bree, come on," yelled Aravis over her shoulder. This race was very grueling for the horses. As as they topped each ridge, they found another valley and another ridge beyond it. And though they knew they were going in more or less the right direction, no one knew how far it was to Anvard. From the top of the second ridge, Shasta looked back again. Instead of a dust cloud well out in the desert, he now saw a black moving mass, rather like ants, on the far bank of the Winding Arrow. They were doubtless looking for a ford. "They're on the river!" he yelled wildly. "Quick, quick!" shouted Aravis. "We might as well not have come at all if we don't reach Anvard in time. Gallop, Bree, gallop! Remember, you're a war horse!" It was all Shasta could do to prevent himself from shouting out similar instructions, but he thought, "The poor chap's doing all he can already," and held his tongue. And certainly both horses were doing, if not all they could, all they thought they could, which is not quite the same thing. Bree had caught up with Win, and they thundered side by side over the turf. It didn't look as if Win could possibly keep it up much longer. At that moment, everyone's feelings were completely altered by a sound from behind. It was not the sound they had been expecting to hear. The noise of hoofs and jingling armor mixed perhaps with Calormene battle cries. Yet Shasta knew it at once. It was the same snarling roar he had heard that moonlit night when they first met Aravis and Win. Bree knew it too. His eyes gleamed red and his ears lay flat back on his skull. And Bree now discovered that he had not really been going as fast, not quite as fast as he could. Shasta felt the change at once. Now they were really going all out. In a few seconds, they were well ahead of Win. Yes, Eric, I can read without my glasses. My glasses are actually for distance, but I just kind of like how I look with glasses on, so I just wear them all the time. Though when I was on my road trip, I wore my sunglasses more than anything. And that was actually really nice to just take a break from wearing my glasses. Because I've heard that it's actually good for your eyes. They'll actually start to repair if you are looking without your glasses. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Some kind of shit there. It's not fair, thought Shasta. I did think we'd be safe from lions here. I still have fun here. I'd show up if Dottie read a newspaper. You will not catch me reading that propaganda horse shit on my channel. He looked over his shoulder. Everything was only too clear. A huge, tawny creature, its body low to the ground like a cat streaking across the lawn to a tree when a strange dog has got into the garden, was behind them, and it was nearer every second and half second. He looked forward again and saw something which he did not take in or even think about. Their way was barred by a smooth green wall about 10 feet high. In the middle of that wall there was a gate, open. In the middle of the gateway stood a tall man, dressed down to his bare feet in a robe colored like autumn leaves, leaning on a straight staff. His beard fell almost to his knees. Eric, you will have to start the video over because I talked about my vacation at the beginning of it, and it was quite nice. Very, very enjoyable. And it's funny that you said my vacation in Cali because I put up a picture in a rock hounding group of the stuff that I got from Glass Beach. And I mentioned that it was in Cali, and one of the people who were triggered on that post, all she said was, "It's California, not Cali. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa." Yeah, there's always got to be one. Like, everyone else is just super nice and like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. But just had to get that one person in there who was like, actually, that's not how it is. I dare you. So funny. So funny. Shasta saw all this in a glance and looked back again. The lion had almost got wind now. It was making snaps at her hind legs, and there was no hope now in her foam-flecked, wide-eyed face. "Stop!" bellowed Shasta in Bree's ear. "Must go back! Must help!" Bree always said afterward that he never heard or never understood this, and as he was in general a very truthful horse, we must accept his word. Shasta slipped his feet out of the stirrup, slid both legs over on the left side, hesitated for one hideous hundredth of a second, and jumped. It hurt horribly and nearly winded him, but before he knew how it hurt him, he was staggering back to help Erebus. He had never done anything like this in his life before and hardly knew why he was doing it now. One of the most terrible noises in the world, a horse's scream, broke from Wynn's lips. Erebus was stooping low over Wynn's neck and seemed to be trying to draw her sword. And now all three, Erebus, Wynn, and the lion, were almost on top of Shasta. Before they reached him, the lion rose on its hind legs, larger than you would have believed a lion could be, and jabbed at Erebus with its right paw. Shasta could see all the terrible claws extended. Erebus screamed and reeled in the saddle. The lion was tearing her shoulders. Shasta, half mad with horror, managed to lurch toward the brute. He had no weapon, not even a stick or a stone. He shouted out idiotically at the lion as one would at a dog. "Go home! Go home!" For a fraction of a second he was staring right into its wide-opened, raging mouth. Then, to his utter astonishment, the lion, still on its hind legs, checked itself suddenly, turned head over heels, picked itself up, and rushed away. "Doc Michael, what's going on?" Shasta did not for a moment suppose it had gone for good. He turned and raced for the gate in the garden wall, which now, for the first time, he remembered seeing. Wynne, stumbling and nearly fainting, was just entering the gate. Erebus! Someone called Daddy's house and crank caller saying, "Get out." Oh, that's funny. I ain't leaving. Erebus still kept her seat, but her back was covered with blood. "Come in, my daughter, come in," the robed and bearded man was saying, and then, "Come in, my son," as Shasta panted up to him. He heard the gate close behind him, and the bearded stranger was already helping Erebus off her horse. They were in a wide and perfectly circular enclosure, protected by a high wall of green turf. A pool of perfectly still water, so full that the water was almost exactly level with the ground, lay before him. At one end of the pool, completely overshadowing it with its branches, there grew the hugest and most beautiful tree that Shasta had ever seen. Beyond the pool was a little low house of stone, roofed with deep and ancient thatch. There was a sound of bleating, and over at the far side of the enclosure there were some goats. The level ground was completely covered with the finest grass. Are you?" panted Shasta. "Are you King Loon of Archenland?" The water was level, the sand was level, you know it. Yep, that's my number, 867-5309. You got it. You got it. Crushing. The old man shook his head. "No," he replied in a quiet voice. "I am the Hermit of the Southern March. And now, my son, waste no time on questions, but obey. This damsel is wounded. Your horses are spent. Rabadash is at the moment finding a ford over the winding arrow. If you run now without a moment's rest, you will be in time to warn King Loon." Shasta's heart fainted at these words, for he felt he had no strength left, and he writhed inside at what seemed the cruelty and unfairness of the demand. He had not yet learned that if you do one good deed, your reward usually is to be set to do another and harder and better one. But all he said out loud was, "Where is King Loon?" The hermit turned and pointed with his staff. "Look," he said, "there is another gate, right opposite to the one you entered by. Open it and go straight ahead, always straight ahead, over level or steep, over smooth or rough, over dry or wet. I know by my art that you will find King Loon straight ahead. But run, run, always run." Shasta nodded his head, ran to the northern gate, and disappeared beyond it. Then the hermit took Erebus, whom he had all this time been supporting with his left arm, and half led, half carried her into the house. After a long time he came out again. "Now, cousins," he said to the horses, "it is your turn." "I don't trust you." Yeah, never give out your phone number to internet people. Only Mark Sargent does that. Without waiting for an answer, and indeed they were too exhausted to speak, he took the bridles and saddles off both of them. Then he rubbed them both down so well that a groom in a king's stable could not have done it better. "There, cousins," he said, dismiss it all from your minds and be comforted. Here is water and there is grass. You shall have a hot mash when I have milked my other cousins, the goats." "Sir," said Wynne, finding her voice at last, "will the Tarkina live? Has the lion killed her?" "I, who know many present things by my art," replied the hermit with a smile, "have yet little knowledge of things future. Therefore I do not know whether any man or woman or beast in the whole world will be alive when the sun sets tonight. but be of good hope. The damsel is likely to live as long as any her age. You don't trust me to give you a wrench, making joke. Oh, I didn't catch that. But when I'm finished with this chapter, I'll go to the YouTube stream and give out some wrenches. So, hey, Barbara Zena, yay! And totally understandable. If you want to watch your daughter stream, definitely do that. Definitely do that. Let's see. When Erebus came to herself, she found that she was lying on her face on a low bed of extraordinary softness in a cool, bare room with walls of undressed stone. She couldn't understand why she had been laid on her face, but when she tried to turn over and felt the hot, burning pains all over her back, she remembered and realized why. She couldn't understand what delightfully springy stuff the bed was made of, because it was made of heather, which is the best bedding, and heather was a thing she had never seen or heard of. The door opened and the hermit entered, carrying a large wooden bowl in his hand. After carefully setting this down, he came to the bedside and asked, "How do you find yourself, my daughter?" "My back is very sore, father," said Erebus, "but there is nothing else wrong with me." He knelt beside her, laid his hand on her forehead, and felt her pulse. Yes, heather. Do you know what heather is, Eric? It's a very soft, nice, pretty, plushy flower, and yeah, it's very good for. That's awesome. "There is no fever," he said. "You will do well." "Indeed, there is no reason why you should not get up tomorrow. But now, drink this." He fetched the wooden bowl and held it to her lips. Erebus couldn't help making a face when she tasted it, for goat's milk is rather a shock when you are not used to it. But she was very thirsty and managed to drink it all, and felt better when she had finished. "Now, my daughter, you may sleep when you wish," said the hermit, "for your wounds are washed and dressed, and though they smart, they are no more serious than they had been the cuts of a whip. It must have been a very strange lion, for instead of catching you out of the saddle and getting his teeth into you, he has only drawn his claws across your back. 10 scratches, sore, but not deep or dangerous." "I say," said Erebus, "I have had luck." "Daughter," said the hermit, "I have now lived 109 winters in this world, and have never yet met any such thing as luck. There is something about all this that I do not understand, but if ever we need to know it, you may be sure that we shall." "Anytime, Eric. I am here to teach the people." "And what about Rabadash and his 200 horse?" asked Erebus. "They will not pass this way, I think," said the hermit. "They must have found a ford by now, well to the east of us. From there they will try to ride straight to Anvard." "Poor Shasta," said Erebus. "Has he far to go? Will he get there first?" "There is good hope of it," said the old man. Erebus lay down again on her side this time and said, "Have I been asleep for a long time? It seems to be getting dark." The hermit was looking out of the only window, which faced north. "This is not the darkness of night," he said presently. "The clouds are falling down from Stormness Head. Our foul weather always comes from there in these parts. There will be thick fog tonight." Yes, Sensei. Next day, except for her sore back, Erebus felt so well that after breakfast, which was porridge and cream, the hermit said she could get up. And, of course, she at once went out to speak to the horses. The weather had changed, and the whole of the green enclosure was filled like a great green cup with sunlight. It was a very peaceful place, lonely and quiet. Win at once trotted across to Erebus and gave her a horse kiss. "Well, where's Bree?" said Erebus when each had asked after the other's health and sleep. "Over there," said Win, pointing with her nose to the far side of the circle, "and I'd wish you'd come and talk to him. There's something wrong. I can't get a word out of him." They strolled across and found Bree lying with his face toward the wall, and though he must have heard them coming, he never turned his head or spoke a word. "Good morning, Bree," said Erebus. "How are you this morning?" Bree muttered something that no one could hear. "The hermit says that Shasta probably got to King Loon in time," continued Erebus, "so it looks as if all our troubles are over. Narnia at last, Bree." "I shall never see Narnia," said Bree in a low voice. "Aren't you well, Bree, dear?" said Erebus. Bree turned round at last, his face mournful as only a horse's can be. "I shall go back to Calormen," he said. "What?" said Erebus. "Back to slavery?" "Yes," said Bree. "Slavery is all I'm fit for. Now, how can I ever show my face among the free horses of Narnia? I, who left a mare and a girl and a boy to be eaten by lions while I galloped all I could to save my own wretched skin." "We all ran as hard as we could," said Win. "Shasta didn't," snorted Bree. "At least he ran in the right direction, ran back, and that is what shamed me most of all. I, who called myself a war horse and boasted of 100 fights, to be beaten by a little human boy, a child, a mere foal, who had never held a sword nor had any good nurture or example in his life." Don't worry, Doc, I have enough sense of humor for the both of us, so you're good. "I know," said Erebus. "I felt just the same. Shasta was marvelous. I'm just as bad as you, Bree. I've been snubbing him and looking down on him ever since you met us, and now he turns out to be the best of us all. But I think it would be better to stay and say we're sorry than to go back to Calormen." "It's all very well for you," said Bree. "You haven't disgraced yourself, but I've lost everything." "My good horse," said the hermit, who had approached them unnoticed because his bare feet made so little noise on that sweet, dewy grass. "My good horse, you've lost nothing but your self-conceit. No, no, cousin, don't put back your ears and shake your mane at me. If you are really so humbled as you sounded a minute ago, you must learn to listen to sense. You're not quite the great horse you had come to think, from living among poor dumb horses. Of course you were braver and cleverer than them. You could hardly help being that. It doesn't follow that you'll be anyone very special in Narnia." "Chemtrail Cowboy, what's happening?" That's a funny name. Awesome. "But as long as you know you're nobody very special, you'll be a very decent sort of horse on the whole, and taking one thing with another. And now, if you and my other 4-footed cousin will come round to the kitchen door, we'll see about the other half of that mash." And that's the end of chapters 9 and 10. So next week, we're going to do 2 chapters. And then the week after, we're going to do 3 chapters. And it's going to finish out the book. So we only have 2 weeks left of The Horse and His Boy. And this book is going so fast. So yeah, I'm excited to finish it. But at the same time, it's like, you don't want to finish it. You know, you want it to keep going when it's such a good story. You want it to just keep going, but it does get really, really good. Just wait. Just you wait. So if anyone would like to donate to me and my channel, you can do paypal.me/finding Dottie, that's Dottie. You do Cash App at $Dottiesdomes. You can do P.O. Box 1598, Shelton, Washington, 98584. And don't forget to get the Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. Get the Bertaria Times app. And order salsa from www.imperiosalsa.com. Support local friends and small businesses. So I'll stay on for a little bit longer. I thought it would be kind of fun if anybody wanted to do like a Dear Dottie section. So you can ask me questions about whatever, and I'll answer honestly. And so yeah, go ahead and ask me some stuff. I'm going to scroll through the chat and go live with Zulu One next, please. I would love to stream with Zulu. I miss streaming with Zulu. Him and I talk shit better than anybody. But he's currently on vacation, and so, might not be able to stream. And I can't stay up very late. And if Zulu and I stream, it will be 5 hours or so. Barbara, yes, donate options are in the description. There's a part 2 to A Horse and His Boy, but that's another story. Ha ha ha. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry, Kirk. That's hilarious. All right, so hello to Sufanelli, Kirk Wilson, Eric DeLeon, Doc Michael, Barbara Zena, Carrie Skates, Zulu One, Chemtrail Cowboy, I think that's all the people. Oh, and Michelle L was here as well. Jason. Hello to everyone. I think that's everyone now. If I didn't say your name, leave me a comment below and I'll shout you out. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to, let's see. Oh my gosh, this scrolling system is terrible. Where was I? Oh, I think I almost found it. Oh my gosh, that's not what I wanted to do. It keeps like jumping up. Eric says, how do I find my next love? Well, I am currently looking for my next love, so I don't have the best advice, but I've heard that when you stop looking for this person, then the universe will provide them to you. You can also manifest them into your life. So you just imagine the type of person that you want to be with, and before you go to bed, you just think of how nice it feels to have this person with you, the things that you would go and do, adventures you would do, conversations you would have, and you just think of having that right now already. And however manifesting works, that person will come into your life, and then that dream of what you were envisioning will come true. Also, I recommend being fully and completely 100% yourself. You don't have to change for anyone to like you. You don't have to be anything but you. And so just do things that really make you happy, make your life better, and you will find a person who appreciates all those qualities. I make awesome, oh my gosh, I just can't stand it when it jumps so crazy like that. There we go. Now I'm back. I make awesome homemade salsa, tomatoes, onions, serrano, habanero seasoning. That sounds super good. Sounds really spicy. Chemtrail Cowboy says we met at Cozy's. Oh, awesome. You were at Cozy's? That's great. I thought your number was 6 million. That sounds a little high, Zulu. So close. Sufanelli, she crushes so hard. Don't you skip my question that is above. Was that the question? Did I get that question? Did I get it? Love at the bowling alley. I mean, you never know. Like, people have met in weirder places than that. So I'm not opposed to having a friendly battle of bowling at Flattoberfest. Go to Flattoberfest. Yeah, Karen B is having a singles mingle at Flattoberfest, so guaranteed to meet flat earthers. So that's a huge bonus. And yeah, Flattoberfest is October 23rd and 24th in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And you can get your tickets at flatearthfestivals.com. You can get this hat at tinfoilhatfactory.com. But yeah, go to Flattoberfest, definitely, because you're going to meet some awesome people. You're going to just have a great freaking time. Maybe you just found her here, aka Dottie. Barbara, you're silly. Doc's coming to sweep you off your feet at Flattoberfest. You're not supposed to tell her. You guys stop it. You're gonna make me blush, which I know you love that shit. I didn't really like spicy food until I met my wife. I like spicy. I like a heat where it like just makes your face get warm, but it doesn't kill you. It's like if I get Thai food, I get a 3-star spicy out of 5. So however freaking spicy that is, I don't know. That's how spicy I like it. Let's see. How did my meetup go last weekend? It went awesome. It was very nice. I had about 18 people show up. Mark Sargent came out. Bali Music Journey came out. There was a gentleman named Alex and his wife and their 2 kids. Alex was at my meetup in March. The whole family came out to the meetup at Cozy's Roadhouse. So yeah, there was old friends there. There was new people that I had met. One gal, she was like very flabbergasted that Mark Sargent was there and that I am friends with him and have been for years. And she was wanting to meet him very bad, but she was so nervous. And so me being me, obviously, as I was walking by, I was like, oh, Mark, hey, my friend Marlo over here wants to meet you. And he's like, okay, cool. Like, how you doing? It's just like, oh my God, totally starstruck. It was amazing. It was awesome because I totally understand that feeling. When I went to meet Mark in 2018, wanted to meet him and D Marble. And I was so nervous. I had not been to a meetup yet. I had just found Flat Earth in 2017, November 2017. And so then that meetup was in like April or May, I think. And yeah, I drove a couple hours up to Mukilteo so that I could meet Mark and D Marble. And yeah, it was just, I was so nervous, and like calling into Mark's show the first time was definitely very starstruck. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So it was fun to see someone else get like starstruck over meeting their like celebrity crush or whatever. But yeah, it was super awesome. And yeah, really good meetup. I had bears come out, I had flat earth people come out, and yeah, like I said, old friends and new. And it was it's just really, really a good time. So we were in this covered picnic area pavilion thing at first, and then a couple guys came over and they're like, "Hey, I'm so sorry, we're gonna have to ask you to move because we actually rented out this pavilion." And that was no problem. There was a ton of picnic benches around and the weather was great. So we just went to a couple of the picnic benches outside the pavilion. Well, it ended up being a wedding that was going on in that pavilion. And so they set up all the folding chairs and put up some decorations. And I think Bali Music Journey, he left some of he's got like Flat Earth business cards. He left those on the gift table. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun. And we tried to invite some random strangers to join our Flat Earth meetup, and they're like, no thanks, no, not doing that. But yeah, it was a really good time. Let's see. Eric says, what is my favorite dessert? Probably a really good New York style cheesecake. Probably with some cherries on top too. Yeah, I would definitely pick cheesecake over probably any dessert. Yeah, it's just the best. The best. All about that cream cheese. Yum. Bears, did we all run? We did not, since I myself am a bear, retarded bear. And so yeah, I would not run from my people. But yeah, it was a really good time. Just really, really awesome. Like that's the fourth meetup that I personally have organized, and every single one of them has been awesome. They have all been really fun. I have seen old friends and new at them. You just kind of become, Doc Michael says, no pants bear. Yeah, I think the funniest name, like joke name that me and Zulu One and Waters Above, it was in one of their trivia streams. We came up with like, I think it was like mashed potato bear, something like that. It's so funny. Spicy Sarah, there she is. And Sarah is the one who has the salsa, so order some salsa from her. Imperio salsa. It's amazing. But in a weird mood tonight. Just tonight, not every day, all the time, always in a weird mood, not that. I mean, if you can be weird, why would you want to be normal? Just seems so boring and dumb, pointless. That's what I'm saying. Like, gotta be yourself 100%, because there's no one else like you. So it's all good that you're late for the party. Not much going on right now. I'm just doing like open chat. You can ask me any question you want. Yeah, just talking about my meetup. And yeah, my road trip to California was amazing. I wish that there was a way that I could move to. This is the only way that I would ever move to California, is if I can move to Daryl Davis's farm, because he's got 32 acres and they have a food garden, but since they have the grow operation, no one is really running the food garden. And the 32 acres and the amount of food plants that Daryl wants, like, I'm your girl for the food garden, because that is what I want to do. So I'm currently looking for an RV, and I don't know as of yet how it would work that I would like to live on Daryl's property. But that's one thing that I'm just working on manifesting. Just kind of things, sometimes they just work out in crazy ways that you aren't expecting if you just kind of have faith that they will work out. And I don't know that that will work out for me. You never know. But anyway, I am looking for an RV, and I think that's what I want to live in for a while, because with the price of lumber, supplies, all this stuff right now, it's just not, and like not wanting to take a loan, it's just not feasible for me to build the tiny house that I want. But I do want to downsize all my stuff, and I do want to live in an RV so that I get used to tiny living. And my granny said that it's about time that I find my own place. So yeah, I'm looking for an RV. So just put that out to the ether. Tell your friends, tell your family, find Dottie an RV. Yes, yes. A drivable one, not a tow, not like a fifth wheel, not one that I have to pull. Definitely a drivable one. So yeah, spread the word. Find Dottie an RV. Hashtag it. But yeah, if I could, I would up and move to Daryl Davis's farm right now. Zulu, you'll enjoy this. I was laying in a hammock, and I was stavelied on science out of my fucking mind, because yeah, I don't smoke very much anymore, at all, and so I was just beyond high as a kite, and I was laying in a hammock, and I was just swinging, laying there, staring at the tree, and I had a moment that I'm like, I may have been laying here for 5 minutes. I may also have been laying here for 3 days. They both would feel the same to me because I'm so high that either time would make sense. But it's like the sun has not, risen and set 3 days in a row. So I feel like it was just, maybe an hour that I was laying there. I don't know, but it was just really funny that I was like, wow, I got so stavely that time no longer exists anymore. So yeah, really funny. Let's see. Next, bow hunting and knife throwing video. Yeah, you know what? I do need to do another one of those because the last 2 days I have been throwing my knives, and so I'm really trying to dedicate some time every day to do it. I don't know that I'm going to get it done tonight. It looks like it's getting dark out, but I will definitely do it tomorrow. Good night, everyone. I'm going to go live. Come over for a few. Okay, so go over to Zulu's channel. I'll end this so you guys can go hang out with Zulu. I might pop in chat a little bit too before I go to bed. But oh, I thought I was gonna get the hiccups. I'm at Dad's in Florida, all science out, as you should be, as you should be. Don't steal Dottie's apples or you're going to get a throwing knife in the back. This is true. Luckily, I will grow enough apples that I will share. But yeah, I thank you all for hanging out with me, as always. And yeah, we're almost done with the book. So 2 weeks left on the book, and we will be wrapping this bad boy up. So anyway, yeah, I thank you all for being here. Much love. Blessed travels along the plane, and I'll see y'all on the flat side. Peace out, y'all.